Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today I have a very special guest, Miss Leslie Dean with the Ellis County Children's Advocacy Center. Ma'am, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. These are the shows I enjoy.
Absolutely. I'm just honored to be here with you, DV.
I appreciate that. So I'm doing this charity series where I'm doing charities. It's a little bit different from what I normally do, but I really believe that we must be part of this community and help people in need. So can you go ahead and tell me about yourself, a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the people of Ellis County?
Yes, I'd be glad to. I am a daughter of Ellis County. I was born and raised here in this fine county, and I graduated from Waxahachie High School, and then did college and went and met my husband in Stephenville. And so we lived in Central Texas for a while, and that is where I got my start in working with kids who have been abused and neglected. I worked at a residential treatment center for emotionally disturbed children out in Goldthwaite, Texas. And so I really saw the end effects of what child abuse and neglect can do to kids. And I worked with them directly and listened to their stories and helped them through their traumas in a therapeutic setting. And then from there, I ended up working in the foster care system from a child placing part of it, where we would license foster homes, and I was a regional director of a large child placing agency. So I had an office in Dallas and in Tyler and Texarkana. And I worked firsthand for about 21 years in the foster care system. Then this wonderful opportunity for me to come and work in my own community. I didn't have to commute to Dallas anymore or to Tyler. I could make an impact right here in Ellis County when the executive director position came open here. And so since May of 2018, I have been the director here at the Ellis County Children's Advocacy Center.
I want to thank you so much for giving back to your community. It takes a very special person to do your type of work. I've met many people who burn out, especially when they're dealing with the foster care system. And there's so many kids, there's so many stories, there's so many victims, and you can't help them all. So it's sometimes it's a thankless task. So I want to thank you for helping the least of us, the ones that are supposed to be protected. Can you tell me more about your organization?
Yeah. One thing that you said really struck a chord, because, people do get burned out in this field, and they have secondary trauma that they experience. And so part of what we're trying to do here is to help the helpers make sure that they are taking care of themselves so that they can continue on in the work. What's really cool to me is that, having experienced work in the foster care system, that's kind of the end of child abuse, where the children have been removed from the situations. They go through, hopefully, either back to their homes or into an adoptive placement. But here at the center, we are kind of at the front end of that. So we can really make an impact on the children that come into our doors, and not just the children, but the families. The families that walk into our doors need lots of help. So what the Advocacy Center is, we're formed in about 1998, 99 is when they were forming the organization. And we were born out of the need for local law enforcement departments and offices and child protective services. We need those people to work together. And as you know, large governmental entities sometimes work in silos and they don't necessarily communicate. But kids were falling through the cracks and families were falling through the cracks. And a family that may be being seen in the law enforcement area may also be seen by CPS, and they were not talking to each other. So one of our main jobs is to facilitate a joint investigation of child abuse. And we want to make sure that we want kids not to have to be traumatized over and over and over again in a system where they have to talk to this person and then tell their story to the next person and then the next person. So can you imagine having gone through a traumatic event, sometimes chronically over time, and having to explain to someone over and over and over again what has happened to you? So for kids, they have a very, very special need because we are adults, and when we interview them or talk to them or ask them questions, we could be leading or biased in our questioning. And so over time, they have really worked on the evidence-based forensic interviewing. And forensic interviewing is a specialty that we have forensic interviewers that have gone through a year full of training that prepares them to be able to talk to kids and ask questions in a forensic interview. So when an investigation starts here in Ellis County, if it is sexual abuse, physical abuse, major neglect, if we have a child that witnessed domestic violence or a violent crime, if there's a school shooting or anything like that, if there is a child death, and there's other children in the home or children of the caretaker of the child, then we will be a part of that interview process. And so our forensic interviews are developmentally appropriate. Oftentimes these cases have to go to court. And so we have to make sure that they're legally sound interviews, that we're not asking biased questions or leading questions. We also want to make sure that the kids, their culture is a part of what we're thinking through before we ask questions. And it's really there just to help the child tell their story and tell what happened. And so we really want the kids to use their words. So that's a really important piece, but that's not the only thing that we do here. Many people thought that that's all we did. Mm-hmm. We have families that come to us from all walks of life. We have some families on one part of the socioeconomic scale all the way to the other, because sexual abuse and physical abuse, those things don't know necessarily. You don't. It does.
It transcends social status.
It does. And so the families that come to us have all different kinds of needs. And so we have a family advocate. Actually, we have two now. We got a grant to have a second family advocate. Yeah, we are growing. So have two family advocates that work with our families, and their whole job is to talk to the families and assess them and see if there's anything that they need. Because Ellis County has a lot of resources that we can connect them with. And so you may have a family who is going through this horrible sexual abuse investigation, and mom or dad don't have a lot of resources, and maybe they're food insecure. Maybe mom needs a job. Maybe mom's really would like to get her GED. So our family advocate will do a needs assessment with them and walk with them through the whole process. Oftentimes kids that have been a victim of crime could benefit from crime victims compensation, but those applications are like government applications. They're really long, and when a person submits them, they go to the bottom of the pile. We have presumed eligibility with the OAG's office, the Attorney General's office. So and so our applications, when we submit them, they know that we've already vetted the crime victim. And so those applications, we have a streamline for them. So just those kinds of things can really help a family when they're dealing with a major crisis like sexual abuse in their family. And we have this saying that we provide justice, hope, and healing. So what I've talked with you about so far is justice, which is our forensic interviews and being able to provide that piece for when the case goes to court or is sent to the prosecution office. It helps with the investigative process for our law enforcement and child protective services. And then we have family advocacy, which provides hope. But the last thing I want to talk about is healing. And so we have mental health services that are free to the kids, to their siblings, to mom and dad, if necessary, or caregivers, because it's the whole family unit that really needs to heal from this situation. We only work with non-offenders, so we don't necessarily provide services to offending family members, but for non-offending family members, we are there for them. And so we have 2 therapists and a clinical director. We've just secured some additional funding for a 3rd clinician. And so we are really working hard to streamline our process and get kids into therapeutic services to recover from the trauma that they've experienced.
I love that. You're covering the bases. With the stages of trauma. When I think of child abuse, to me, I think of Gabriel Fernandez. Gabriel Fernandez will never leave. His story has burned into my heart and mind. The kid out in Palmdale, who was tortured. He was tortured to death. And, that, and then, recently the news out of Dallas, where they found the bones of a kid and the 2 kids were left to fend for themselves.
Yeah, that was in Houston.
To fend for themselves. It's the least of us is being abused, and you're providing a spot for them. So a question, a mom knows or finds out that her child is being abused. She comes, how do they get a hold of you? What happens next?
Yeah, so we have to get referrals through local law enforcement or child protective services. So if anyone sees abuse happening, then they can call the statewide intake for child abuse. That we get those reports, as well as child protective services and law enforcement. And so we used to not get those reports, but legislation passed. So not this September, but the September before, we began seeing the statewide intakes. And so they would call the 800 number. Let me write it down because it's been a while since I've had to actually call it. 1-800. I think it's 454-8500. 1-800-454-8500. No, it's 8400. I'm gonna look it up before we get off. But I think it's 454-8400. But if they look up the child abuse hotline, that will tell them where they need to call if they have an abuse or neglect, if they suspect that that's happening. What happens is we get that referral, and then we respond as a multidisciplinary team. Okay. So we don't work in silos anymore. We work together. We have law enforcement from all over the county, and child protective services and our DA's office have all signed an agreement that we will work these cases in a certain way. And so
I know Ann Montgomery, she prosecuted one recently. Thank you, Ann Montgomery. I appreciate that. So
we work very closely with Ann's office. We have meetings twice a month to staff our cases, staff our kiddos' cases, and make sure that we are looking at all the areas, and we have the whole expertise of our whole multidisciplinary team. And you'd be amazed at the resources and how we're sharing that from different law enforcement agencies. So if we have a small law enforcement agency that doesn't do these cases very often, Waxahachie Sheriff's Office, they're, Midlothian, Ennis, they do the bulk of the cases in Ellis County. So those detectives are experts in this, and they share information on how they get resources. And so it's an amazing thing whenever our multidisciplinary team is working together. And it's really the heart of the model, because that ensures that kids are getting what they need, and that we're providing the justice that they need.
Now, oh yes, definitely deserve. Now, when you mentioned earlier about services and on the back end of helping, maybe helping with a GED, I think you mentioned, or something like that, educational, how does that work?
So, as you know, Ellis County has lots of other resources. We have Christian Women Job Corps. We have Waxahachie Care that services our community very well. We have Manna House. We have Daniel's Den. And from time to time, we have a family that is needing a resource. And so, some case managers would just, hand someone a paper that says, here's 10 places to call, but
I've seen that. Yes.
But what we try to do is we try to make connections with those other nonprofit organizations and have a good relationship with them, so we can pick up the phone and say, hey, we have the Johnson family that's coming to you. I just made that up. I don't know. That's not one of our families, but we have this family that's coming to you, and here's what their need is. And then, like, I'm going to use Waxahachie Care as an example. They say, thank you, Leslie. We'll be on the lookout for them. And that communication is really important, because a lot of nonprofits don't know what each other do. And so, we build connections. We're a part of the United Way, and we build connections with the other nonprofits that are there. We've got the YMCA, you've got Waxahachie Care, you've got, Reach Council, you've got all these nonprofits that have different resources. So we are not the ones that actually go through and do the GE classes for her. What we would do is we would make that referral, find who does GED courses or classes, and we would help that mom or dad get involved in those classes. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I have a story of a really cool thing that happened in family advocacy that might kind of illustrate what we're talking about here.
I would love that. Yes. Tell the people of Ellis County.
Okay. So we had a kiddo that her dad was military. And so they were living with in-laws. And it came out that he had been sexually abusing his child, which is a horrible experience to go through. So mom was trying to figure out what to do. And because she was living in, she was about to lose her housing. And she also had not worked in like 6 years because she was a military mom, and she just kind of moved around. So they were here in Ellis County, and she called us because the child was having some problems, some toileting problems, bathroom problems, which is very typical for a kid that's experienced sexual abuse to regress from being potty trained and things like that. So it's just one of those normal emotional responses. And so, of course, when the family advocate came to me, she was like, Leslie, I think there's more going on here. She said the mom called me about this, and we want to help her in that way, but I think there's more to it. And I said, okay, let's come up with a plan. I said, of course, we're going to do interventions that have to do with potty training. We're going to get potty prizes, and we're going to do, a sticker chart, and we're going to do some interventions to help mom work with their daughter. But when we sat down with mom, we found out that she was about to lose her housing. She had no job, and she had no idea what to do. And so how on earth are you going to be able to spend your time and effort and energy helping your child with potty problems when you are worried about the roof over your head? So our philosophy is about is about strengthening the family. If we can strengthen this mom will be in a better place to then help her child. And as the child was going through therapy, that's going to help the child recover as well. But if parents are not in a good place, therapy only happens once a week, or, sometimes twice a month. So we're not going to be miracle workers in that hour a week, so it really helps to have the family engaged and be responsive. So that's where our focus was. Our focus was getting mom connected to resources in our community. We hooked her up with housing in Ellis County, and then we hooked her up with a Job Corps where she could work on her resume, get interview clothing, and she got a job. And pretty soon after that, and then it was just great. We followed the mom throughout the case, and we were there for her. So
I love that story. It started off, and anytime as kids, there's a lot of things I could take, and my background, I've seen some very bad things, but when it comes to kids, it jerks at me. It really does. And then to come out with such a positive experience at the end, thank you for doing that and telling that story. These organizations don't run on air. I'm sure they require funding. Can you talk about funding and maybe donations?
Yeah. So the Advocacy Center, we were written in the Texas Family Code to exist. So we are a little bit different nonprofit than a lot of nonprofits. We are kind of a hybrid of, we're not the government, we're not a local entity, but we are definitely working in connection with them. So we do receive funds from federal funds from VOCA, which is Victims of Crime Act. We receive funds from Health and Human Services Commission, which are state funds. Our United Ways in both West Ellis County and Greater Ennis support this organization. And then we have donors for our events. We do special events throughout the year. And then we also have recurring donors, and we are really trying to build our recurring donor base. We had just recently built it all into our system where you can just go online and sign up for that. And so it's kind of a new program for us, but we're trying to create sustainability for this agency. We're so needed that we can't just be one of those nonprofits that because of funding cuts, we're gone. And so we really need to create sustainability for our agency. And what that can look like is people that, you may not be able to give a whole big, huge amount, and that's okay. Because if you could give $20, $30, dollars a month, or even less, if you could give $10 a month, that really makes a big deal for a nonprofit in their cash flow. And so that we can depend on monies coming in ongoing. So that recurring donation, when you go to sign on our website and you click donate, you can say, I want this to be a recurring donation, and it will it's on our website. You go, and I love it that it says take action, because people want to know how they can help, and it breaks it down, and it kind of shows you what different amounts could help pay for. And so our services are expensive, and the reason why they're expensive is because I have to have professional people to provide the services that our kids need. Our therapists are specialized in trauma. They're specializing in sexual abuse and physical abuse and chronic dysfunction in families. Okay. But also we have sent them to get cutting edge training. They have training called EMDR, which is Are you familiar with that?
Yes, EMDR. Yes, I am.
Okay, so it really helps with post-traumatic stress disorder, but for our kids, it can lower the time that they're in therapy, and so we can do it more efficiently. So I'm telling you, DV, we had 100 kids on our waiting list when I started in 2018 for therapy services. And
Oh,
that was just not acceptable. So being able to find more funding has also helped us to grow and to meet the current needs of our county. But as you know, we are growing. And so we
right.
need to be thinking about 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the line. What do we need to be doing to make sure that these services are here today and they are here tomorrow?
Tell me real quickly, what kind of numbers are we talking about? I mean, what kind of numbers are coming? Hey, Leslie, we need you to help. Leslie, we need you to help. Do you have some kind of numbers on what you're seeing?
So last year we had the most interviews that we've ever done, and we had 437 children that we interviewed in the Ellis County. We had I'm trying to think of the numbers for therapy right off the top of my head. I should have them written down.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to
That's
put you
okay.
on the spot. So,
That's all right. No, but I do know the number for the forensic interviews that we did. It just kind of is burned into my memory. And I do know that we had over 300 families that 437 represented, 300 families that we helped with family advocacy. And then our therapy numbers, so one therapist can see like 25 kids at a time. And so that's a lot of children on their list. So it could be children or a combination of children and adults. And they've just continued to increase the amount of kids and families that they are seeing. So we're also about looking at what are the needs of the kids that come to us and expanding the services. So we have written some extra grants, and we've kind of run out of space here at the center. I've converted our boardroom into a cubicle. We call it the quad, but it's cubicles for our staff. They were generous and gave up their office space so that we could have more rooms for therapy and programs, to have meeting rooms with families. But really, we should be able to do more than one forensic interview at a time. I have one full-time forensic interviewer, but I have two other forensic interviewers that have other jobs, but they are trained forensic interviewers. So we could do up to 3 simultaneous interviews if we had to, but we don't have the space to do that. So we are expanding our mental health services. We are located in a really cool spot here in Waxahachie. We're right across the street, catty corner from the Salvation Army and the police department. We're on the corner of Ross and Farley. And right next door to us, across the field, is Texas Baptist Home. And we will be renting one of their homes to expand our therapy services so that we
that
can
is
see more
fantastic.
kids.
Oh wow, that is fantastic. I love that. Um, so you heard it. You heard it from Leslie. You can get on and donate, and the link is down there. And if you just type in Ellis County Children Advocacy in Google, it takes you right to it. Um, you know, we or this community tends to be big on self-reliance and not having the government intervene in every single part of our lives. This is a way to keep that from happening by helping um, uh, organizations like this and people like Leslie expand these services and be able to help more kids. So I hope that you guys will go and donate to this wonderful organization because our kids are our most precious, the most precious thing in our lives are our children. And if we're not helping the children, our society is lost. Our future is lost. Leslie, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. If there's anything else you want to say to Ellis County, say it. I really do appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. I thank you so much for seeking us out and inviting me to come. If people would like to know more information, they can always give us a call at 972-937-1870. If they would like to have a tour of our facility and see what, kind of behind the scenes, how we work. I would be glad to set up a tour with your watchers, your
Yeah, yeah.
audience.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to
If you would like
interrupt,
to
but
come.
I just noticed that one of our school board members in Midlothian, Miss Andrea Walton, said, can you please share how you work with all the school districts and the school counselors?
Oh yeah. So we've been working with the schools quite a bit since I started. Midlothian, Waxahachie, Maypearl, Red Oak, the school counselors, we will get Ennis also. We will do training for them on recognizing and reporting. We also have, we want to give them updated information of the latest things that we are hearing and seeing in Ellis County. And one of those things is the need to have a response to child sex trafficking. Believe it or not, we do have sex trafficking victims here in Ellis County. And we have been working with the governor's office and Ann Montgomery's office to develop a child sex trafficking response. We've also had huge support from our sheriff's office to do just that. And so we have gone out and talked with our school counselors, and we have just a great relationship with them where if they have a situation where they're not really sure what to do, they know that they can call us. And so getting out there and educating the educators, because they are our first line of child abuse. They are our first line of defense. They see those kids every single day. They know when a kid comes in from day to day, something's changed, something's wrong, something's different. They notice things. And so during the pandemic, we were really worried about kids because we knew that the teachers always have, their eyes on the kids, and they're watching, and they report things. So we want to educate the educators to let them know how to report. What are the signs? What are symptoms? What do they need to look for so that they feel prepared to make a report when necessary? But also we work with administrators. And in Midlothian, I was invited to come and do a couple of days training for their administrators, their assistant principals, and we went with law enforcement, and we answered their questions because they don't have it easy. They're having to make some really difficult decisions in knowing what to do when a crisis like this happens. And sometimes it has to do with other students or an adult. And so really to have some good relationships built so that they can depend on us when they need us has been our goal, because I think if we're working together, we're going to be stronger for kids.
Definitely. I love Dr. Faye is awesome in Midlothian, and I'm sure she had something with you getting there, and Miss Andrea Walton. Dr. Hollingsworth is cool too, and Waxahachie ISD, so I'm sure he'd be willing to help any way he could.
Yeah, and Dr. Averett happens to be my brother, and he is the secondary, the assistant superintendent for secondary. So these relationships are important, and if I can use and leverage our relationships to do good work for kids, we're going to do that.
Wow, that is cool. It just got better. So I mean, I'm sorry. It got better in that you're helping, and the way that you help and knowing how much you help and how much you're doing, that part got better. And that's what I meant by that. I mean, I wish you didn't have to do it, but thank you for doing it. I appreciate that. And I'm sure viewers and the people of Ellis County that you've helped appreciate that, Leslie. Thanks again for coming on. And, I hope that everybody will donate. So.
Thank you. And I appreciate your support. And, God bless you for the things that you're doing.
Thank you. Bye-bye.